I'm just going to talk a bit about repair of books. It's a little bit difficult to give any precise guidelines about this because books vary so much, and what is good for one is not necessarily good for another. But I'm just going to look at these few books here which I've put out to see what you need to consider when you're talking about repair. Starting with the Winnie the Pooh, it's 1940s, I think, something like that, 1944, I think. Interestingly, the mull has been economised on, and there's only mull, top and bottom, nothing in the middle, and no tapes. So it's a fairly economical production. You have to be careful with this kind of thing that you're not actually taking the value away from a very old first edition or something like that. A first edition of Winnie the Pooh is probably worth about £2,000. This isn't. This is not a first edition, so it doesn't particularly matter. There are end papers which are sound. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a slight split there, but I don't think that matters. And the back, the end paper will need a bit of repair, but I think what I'll do is just put on it a bit of Japanese tissue, probably there, to hold it together. And then we can lift up this cloth here, take off the backing here with a lot of paste and just remove it so we can re-glue it, and put a new piece of cloth round, and then I'll replace the original spine on there. So that's fairly straightforward. The second one I've put out here is a very nice block printed Shelley, the poet Shelley, and end papers of no interest whatsoever. They're fairly boring, and there's nothing there that needs keeping. The name even isn't interesting, it's somewhere inside. So we could totally replace those end papers, which makes life a lot easier. And I think there we'd take the back off. The spine seems to have disappeared. We'd take the back off, again with paste, and reback it. And it's got fairly sound boards, so we'd probably be able to split those. I'll see. We're supposed to, but sometimes it's just so difficult to split them that it's not really practicable. So that's what I'll do with that. This is a very rather nice edition of Kipling, Rewards and Fairies. Quite a standard kind of pattern with this elephant head and the very, very thin Skyver leather. It's so thin, it's like paper, and it tears just as easily, and not very easy to repair really. But what I think probably here we'll do is, because the end paper is sound on the inside, so that's okay, and that can be tipped back together. I don't think there's much more to do there really, and having got that back on, I think probably in this case I'd put some Japanese tissue along the join and colour it and polish it. It's so difficult to lift up this leather here because it's rotting really, and once you start lifting this kind of thing it will disintegrate. The leather isn't stuck down to the board altogether. You can see that it never has been stuck down, so it will be possible to insert something on there, but the difficulty is the spine. There are two Beatrix Potters here, a Fierce Bad Rabbit. We've got the spine there, so that can go back eventually. But there are some pages loose, so I'd have to take those out and take the sections out and do a bit of re-sewing. You don't need to re-sew very often, and sometimes you can re-sew in bits. So this I'll have to put back together, but we'll do that as time goes on. And there's a Tailor of Gloucester, which is the same sort of condition, but we lost the spine there, so that will need complete replacing. And again, there are one or two loose pages with some sellotape, so we'll take that out and remack it. The Beatrix Potters have these very nice end papers, and one doesn't want to lose them, so we need to keep those, and I'll probably detach it here and at the back. Yeah, that's detached anyway, so we'll take the back off like that and then reback the whole thing. And just talking of end papers, Samuel Whiskers, another Beatrix Potter, has got, again, the end papers designed specially for this particular book with all the rats running around. So, again, that's important to keep those and make sure that they remain intact. And they are sound, so we had to take the end paper off the book and deal with it like that. And finally, just to look at a real horror, it's a book called Consult Me. It's a book of various, what it is, household recipes, and the book that every family needs. Consult me to know how to cook, and confectionery and household management. So it's a sort of general encyclopedia of household hints. And somebody has got the idea that you have to sew books together, so they put some stitching up here, and there's some stitching here as well. But we've got most of it. It's the back is there. So I think I'll take all that out, take this backing off. Again, the end, no, there's a signature on the end paper, so I'd probably try to keep this but put some new end papers in. I'm going to go through each book in turn, maybe not all of them, but certainly I'm going to go through the process for each one, and we'll do them one by one, and you can see what it's possible to do in certain circumstances. As I said, you can't always do this with everything, and you do need to take advice before you start doing anything too radical to repair a book of this sort.